This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about Eyes of Wakanda, Episode 4, The Last Panther.
We were outfitted for infiltration, not conflict. Certainly not at this level. We must abort the mission for now.
What? What about the artifact?
A War Dog's mission is greater than one artifact. Sometimes that means mitigating any number of dangers to the kingdom.
You are not suggesting I return home from my first mission empty-handed.
We need to move out now, while we still can.
Our history does not chronicle the stories of those who just sat back and watched, Kuda. Our time is now.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders. Welcome to the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries, where we are on to episode 4 of Eyes of Wakanda, The Last Panther. I am one of your hosts, John.
Hey there, fellow time-traveling Panthers. I'm one of your other hosts, Derek.
Yes. If only we could go back and time travel, or the Carolina Panthers could time travel and actually win something.
Well, we got to the Super Bowl, so at least
go back.
Time traveling back, getting that team together, bring them forward. Yeah, that might be a way to do it.
That'd be quite good, wouldn't it, for you?
It would be very good for me, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the Panthers are going to get into a Super Bowl for a very long time, unfortunately.
No.
But hey, look, that's American football. Yes. We're here to talk about the final episode of Eyes of Wakanda. This really caps it that it's not an anthology series like we originally thought it was. We thought it was just going to jump in, tell the story of the War Dogs and move on with no impact. But I like that this is the bow on it all and ties everything together, really.
Well, I'd say it's the second bookend. It bookends it quite nicely with the first episode here. And links into the Black Panther film,
Absolutely.
The first film with Killmonger, and the artifact that he takes or repatriates from the British Museum.
Exactly. We'll talk all about it in our spoiler-filled chat. But if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, as this is the last episode of Eyes of Wakanda, make sure you subscribe to the podcast over on tvpodcastindustries.com, where you'll see almost 1,000 episodes of podcasts about loads and loads of TV shows and movies that you may love. Things like, of course, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Ironheart, loads of stuff connected to this show and loads of stuff connected to the MCU and loads of other shows as well. In fact, this month we're covering The Sandman on Netflix. We're also going to be covering Alien Earth, which is coming up on FX as well. So lots of cool shows just in August.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And of course, fellow Defenders, we love to get your feedback as well. So remember, you can send in thoughts, theories, observations, or comments on any of the shows that we cover to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And you can also leave a comment on our spoiler posts over on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries.
Absolutely, yeah. Spoiler post up there for every episode of every show that we're covering, actually.
Indeed, there is. But speaking of spoilers, let us get into our spoiler-filled discussion of Episode 4 of Eyes of Wakanda, The Last Panther. Derek, who is involved and what are the episode details?
Absolutely. Well, once again, a huge thank you to Ryan Coogler and Zinji Coogler for bringing this show to life as executive producers, of course, along with Kevin Feige, Louis Desposito, Brad Winderbaum, Sev Ohanian, Kalaya King, Todd Harris, and Dana Vasquez Eberhardt. Of course, the executive producer and helmer for this show is Todd Harris, who directed this episode. And once again, this episode, like the first one, is written by Geoffrey Thorne. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with the finale of Eyes of Wakanda, Episode 4, The Last Panther?
Sure. In Ethiopia in 1896, in the middle of a raging battle between the Ethiopians and the invading Italian army, Prince Tafari and the War Dog Kuda recover the Wakandan axe made from vibranium that was lost to the sea when Noni battled the lion. On the return to Wakanda with the artifact, an unknown high-tech entity phases in front of the vehicle driven by Kuda. While initially perceived as a threat, they discover the entity is in fact a future Wakandan Queen who has teleported to their time to save Wakanda and the Earth from an invading alien army called the Horde. The Queen informs them that the dire situation confronting her time is because Wakanda never integrated into the wider world, and so the Horde picked off humankind, followed by Wakanda. This resulted from a hinge point created by Killmonger, who ultimately, through his intervention to secure and lose the Wakandan throne, convinced the true heir King T'Challa to engage with the outside world. Armed with this information and convinced she is telling the truth, Prince Tafari and Kuda head back to the city of Adwa to return the axe, and so set up the chain of events leading to its repatriation by Killmonger from the British Museum. In explaining their actions to the Wakandan Council, Prince Tafari's only regret is that he wishes he could have seen the future that he and Kuda fought for.
Ooh, a little buddy cop adventure.
Yeah,
sort of.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I'd put it in that kind of vein. Yeah,
does feel like that. But what an interesting way to tie this up. The real focus of this series has been about that kind of idea that could Wakanda not have done some form of outreach to the world by keeping themselves behind this hidden wall, creating this hidden society, keeping back all of the things that they have available to them. The rest of the world is having significant issues that could have been helped by Wakanda. And bigger still, it will lead to the end of the world because they have been so insular about the idea of giving help to the rest of the world.
That even when an invading alien army was sort of wiping out different people in different parts of the world, that they held back and stayed behind their force field. But it wasn't enough. The Horde knew that they were there, and then once they had dispatched the rest of humanity, came after Wakanda, and by that time all their tech wasn't enough to save them because they didn't have the numbers effectively. And that they were down to the Queen of Wakanda and some of her last remaining Dora Milaje.
Exactly.
So, this was a really interesting sort of flip, and to just connect it in with the Black Panther in any case.
Yeah. And connect it back to the first episode of the show. We talked about it there in the synopsis about, the specific item, the axe that fell from the hands of the lion and fell into the sea after the explosion. That is the axe that eventually winds up in Killmonger's hands. That's really cool. And I mentioned back in the first episode that, by creating this series, they actually have an explanation for some of those Wakandan items and some of those, some of the Vibranium that's been found across the world. In that first Black Panther movie, Ulysses Claw, is the character that's helping out Killmonger, and there's a mention that he has some Wakandan items in his possession as well. So again, he could have been finding some of the items out in the world, but again, it wasn't enough to for him to take on Wakanda. But here we have this item, this axe, being a really important item to the future. But let's talk about the episode itself. Let's talk about what they give us here with Kuda and Prince Tafari. I like these two characters.
Yeah, I think this was a really good part of the episode for me, was just sort of how they played off one another. You have Tafari disobeying Kuda's orders by actually recovering the axe artifact really quickly. He's in training, as you say, this kind of buddy cop. He's a war dog in training because he's third in line to the throne. He wants to make a mark on history, and interestingly, that even though he does, it will never be known because they can't tell stories about this. This is the mission in the end that they decide. But he does take the lead ultimately, as he says, when in front of the Wakandan Council, he pulled rank on Kuda to say, well, I'm the prince. I might be third in line, but I'm pulling rank. We're taking this back to put it exactly where we found it, so that it will ultimately be recovered and end up in the British Museum.
Exactly. And I think that's what I really like about the writing for this episode, particularly. All of the things that you start out the episode, you think, here's the young prince who's being guided by the old war dog, and the old war dog has to put up with the young prince being really cocky and self-assured and thinking that he can get away with anything. And then by the end of the episode, the prince is actually using all of that to his advantage. He's hiding what he's actually done to save the world. He's hiding that behind him being the cocky prince who pulled rank on the senior officer. And also that throughout the episode, there's that whole conversation. He wants to leave his mark on the world, but he can't leave his mark on the world because of this specific choice that he's given. He regrets that he won't ever find out what the future will be, but he's learned that it's not as important the mark you leave on the world. It's actually what you do that can change and help the world is important. Love that. It's a really
absolutely,
yeah.
And it takes on board Kuda's teachings.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. I also like the fact that initially, when the Queen is introduced, comes across as a threat. There is a fight.
Yeah, I was definitely getting Predator vibes.
Definitely.
Really felt like that, from the suit itself to the noises she's making when she's stalking the two of them. Yeah.
And indeed, I think the pathway that then the story goes down is actually just a surprise.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to connect in with the first Black Panther movie like it did. And I like that connection. It just did it well. As you say, connecting to that, connects back to episode 1 of this series, and in and of itself is a nice little surprise bundle as to what we get here. And so that was really good. I even got, I think, with the Horde, I got Starship Trooper kind of vibes, insects taking over the world.
Yeah. Well, the Horde are Marvel characters. The only times I think I've ever encountered them were in video games based on Marvel, where you need to fight off loads of different enemies at the same time. So they just send out the Horde because it's easy for everybody to deal with. That's where I think I've seen them, not necessarily in comics. So
Yeah, and I mean, I think ultimately, this provides that counterpoint to the previous 3 episodes. This notion that actually, and it's kind of evolved into this, in a sense, the previous episode, episode 3, Lost and Found, it was almost like, well, should we not leave that with them? In the end, they don't, because the Iron Fist plucks the tongue out of the dragon's head.
Yeah.
Whereas this one is that there is merit in leaving it out there until the time is right. And so, I like how, in a sense, this millennial old mission to recover what the lion stole and sort of let the wind take into the world is gradually evolving over time and through this series. So I thought that was a nice little point to this episode. And that's why I think in the end, the connection back to Killmonger was quite a nice little surprise.
It's really good.
Because I don't think I necessarily, certainly not in episode 1, I didn't recognize the weapon that the lion used against Noni, even with her snapping it in half, as being that axe from the movie.
Exactly.
I think it became a bit more obvious here, and certainly when they said it doesn't even have the right handle.
Exactly. Yeah. That's quite similar to what Killmonger says when he's in the British Museum, seeing the item for the first time. The person that's guiding him to the item incorrectly dates it, and he says, "No, I know exactly where this is from." Effectively, so we have a little touch of that here with the prince. I also like the Queen going kind of back through time and back through all the artifacts that we've seen over the last couple of episodes, trying to find that hinge point, trying to find that moment throughout time that needs to absolutely happen so that they can defeat the Horde in the future. I think that's a cool way of using that time travel. What is that point that will allow us to beat this oncoming threat?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just about taking the axe and giving it out into the world to somebody else. It's about it being in the hands specifically of Eric Killmonger, who will inspire the future king of Wakanda to have the outreach program to the world. That in itself is the big hinge point. It's not just about the item itself. It's about every single piece of that connecting together the way it should.
Exactly. There's also a nice, I think, it's kind of an affecting sequence, because the episode doesn't go back to the Queen from the future. All we see is we have this nice sequence where it kind of cuts between Kuda and Tafari taking the axe back, and Kuda being injured under rubble from one of the artillery shells in this battle of the city of Adwa in Ethiopia, ultimately saved by Tafari after he manages to get the axe back into its hiding place. But you have that interspersed with the Queen and the Dermalaji sort of protecting and defending the portal, so that actually the Horde don't go through that and start attacking in this time. And we see the Dermalaji being taken out and the Queen being injured. But it's quite tense, where the final thing that we really see of this Queen, the Last Panther, is the insect legs of the Horde going towards her, and then it switches, and then we don't see her again. And that's kind of interesting. And even with Tafari saying, I wish I could see this future we fought for, or know how long it takes to come to pass. Now, we know it happens because we see then it cuts to Killmonger, and that ending, which I thought was very cool.
It was.
So you assume it's all hunky-dory, but nonetheless, you kind of still feel, has the Queen gotten out of this alive? Is this, necessarily, it may reset where humanity, Wakandans survive, but maybe the individuals, are impacted by this.
Potentially.
I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's like
I will say, it is a very tense scene, but there are a couple of little elements that you missed with the Queen. We do hear her shouting Wakanda forever. That's her final words that we hear on screen. She's shouting that as it's cutting between both sides. And
that's true.
The Horde do get very close to her because they put one of their massive legs through her leg. So one of their pincers through her leg. So she's very damaged, and hopefully that white light that we see as it's closing in on her is the resetting light that's been restored because they've put the axe back where it's supposed to be. So hopefully that's what's happened.
Touch wood.
Yeah. Any notes about the episode? Anything else about the episode you want to mention, John?
No, I no notes from me.
Just one for me that I want to mention. In this episode, having the city of Adwa in Ethiopia in 1890, and this war between the Italians and the Ethiopians, I'm sure this is intentional. Last episode, we had the War Dog Basha, who was out in Chinese society in the 1400s in AD. He comes back to Wakanda and says, to me, they're very primitive. Looking around him at Wakanda and all of their advancements. And here we have Prince Tafari looking on the city of Adwa, which is being fought over by these two completely different cultures, fought over by the invading Italians here, really. And he's saying this is a very advanced society. Look what they've been able to build themselves. Even without our technology, look what the Ethiopians have been able to build. And we, in our lives, I'm sure you know it as well, what we see of Ethiopia now is starving people in Ethiopia. We've been seeing those images for 30 or 40 years now at this stage, unfortunately. And knowing that there was a time pre-war where they were a very advanced society, that they had created a society here where a Wakandan would come to it and go, look how advanced this is. It's a very interesting commentary, and it is showing what war does to societies who have advanced to a great point. I thought it was a really important piece to have the prince say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of demonstrating the mismatch between technology, not advancement of society or the complexity of that society.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's always kind of, in my mind, is always confused, is that people go, technologically we're advanced, therefore the other society, culture is primitive. But actually the complexity of the rules of society, the values may change, the morality compass or center may be different. It might be, spiritual gods. It could be many gods. It could be a single god. It could be the sun. It could be the moon. It could be a person. It could be a creature. But it's like the complexity is there. They are advanced. They have complex societies. It's a technology level that they're at. And, you know, in the same way that Wakanda is trying to keep advanced technology so that they don't have undue influence, so keep it internal. Here we have the externality of advanced weaponry being used by the Italians in order to try and further their empire and expand it and the claims on other people. I do like the fact that you do have that shout where they've captured the artillery, and so seemingly it's not going entirely their own way.
No, it's not. This is the first of 2 wars between Italy and Ethiopia. We know there was a second one around the time of the World War, and part of the reason why it went well for the Italians then was because other people were focused on a world war. Yeah, so it's a good piece of history to talk about.
Absolutely.
But that was my only note.
Excellent.
John, overall, do you defend the final episode of Eyes of Wakanda, episode 4, The Last Panther?
Yes, no, I do defend this episode. I'd give this 4 Italian breadsticks out of 5.
Fantastic.
Yeah, like, I just really enjoyed how it connected everything together. And back in and with the series, but also with Killmonger. And again, you know, really nice sort of buddy relationship here between Tafari and Kuda, which I enjoyed. So, I'd give this 4 Italian breadsticks out of 5.
Fantastic. Yeah, defend this episode. Defend this series has been really interesting. Look, really well written. Animated series. The style of the animation has been fantastic throughout. Really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely.
And the final round of feedback. Thanks so much to those of you who have been sending us feedback in for Eyes of Wakanda. I know, animation series tend to be the ones that have a little less listenership, and people don't tend to interact with us a lot less during those episodes. So thanks so much to those of you who've sent in your thoughts, including, of course, Coffee and Vodka, who's been sending in his thoughts on each of the episodes. So he sent us an email on this episode, John.
Yes. Coffee and Vodka says, "Greetings, fellow Full Circle defenders. And now I want to rewatch the first Black Panther movie. An ending that's not really an ending, and an amazing display of tolerance and patience on Kuda's part. Give me a companion with impulse control, or give me death. And something Tafari is seriously lacking in. The we're all in this together theme of this and really every episode was apparent, without being preachy. A good episode in a great series that'll lend itself well to regular re-binging. Looking forward to your coverage of the series. 4.5 repo men, learnt linear lessons, and ancient agent alliances out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka." Excellent stuff, Coffee and Vodka. I thought this was really, really good. I kind of had a soft spot for Prince Tafari.
I absolutely did as well, yeah, and I love the fact that it does start out that he's the annoying kid being taken on his first mission by the grizzled older guy ready for retirement kind of thing, and by the end he's doing the right thing and doing it for the right reasons. I think he does learn his lesson by the end of the tale.
They end up being a good team, Kuda and Tafari.
An effective team, yes.
Yeah, and I do think, I think you're right, this series has a great rewatch potential, and even sequentially moving on to the first Black Panther movie as well.
I went straight into it. I had to have a look and see what the lines were that were said by Killmonger when he goes into the British Museum and sees his Wakandan artifact sitting in there waiting for him. I had to see that scene again. It's a great introduction to Killmonger.
Yeah, excellent stuff. I'm really pleased you enjoyed the series as well, like we did. So thanks for all the feedback, Coffee and Vodka, through this series. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. And we also got feedback in from Dr. Bob, who's been sending in his feedback on the series as well. Dr. Bob said on this episode, "Now, it might be because all the episodes really hit me, or perhaps I've just gone off Bootstrap Paradox stories, but this was my least favourite episode of the quartet. Not a terrible story, some nice comic interplay, and some impressively hordy hordes, but just not quite as much for me as Noni, Mammon, and the true Iron Fist wear." You see, he still loves the Iron Fist. Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Absolutely.
Iron Fist is great.
Yes, Joe Daddy was really good. Absolutely. But, a very different opinion there from Dr. Bob on this final episode. We kind of liked the fact that it all tied up because we weren't expecting it. We weren't expecting that the entire series was going to tie this way.
Kind of like the bookend of this a bit. for the series. But equally, it sort of leads you off for sure to the first Black Panther movie.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the bootstrap rather than the bookend.
Yeah, maybe.
That's how to do it. But thank you so much, of course, Dr. Bell, for all of your thoughts on the series. And again, as I mentioned, thanks so much to everybody who's been sending in their thoughts on the series. Even if you didn't get the chance to send in your thoughts, thanks so much for listening along with us. And thanks so much to you for joining us for the Eyes of Wakanda podcast. Do make sure you subscribe to the podcast over on tvpodcastindustries.com, where you'll find the coverage that we're doing of lots of other shows, including Alien Earth and The Sandman at the moment. We will be back in the MCU later this year with, I believe, Marvel Zombies, which is coming out hopefully in October, and then with Wonder Man at the end of the year in December.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting. Looking forward to those. I hope you are as well, fellow defenders. But thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, remember, keep watching, keep listening, and of course, fellow defenders, keep defending.
Bye.
Bye.